in this video, I'm going to go over exactly when and how to hire sales reps. Right now, as filming this is a big thing that I see online coaches get wrong a lot of the time. So I wanted to make a video specifically talking about when not, how, the wrongdoings behind it when it comes to sales reps, because sales reps are ultimately the backbone of your sales. Now, for you guys that are new here, my name is Jasmine. I partner with online coaches and helping them scale their back when it comes to doing the sales or the marketing for them. Or I'll either consult online coaches like yourself that's watching this, or if you're a growth op that needs help on how to do this properly, right? I'll help you out with that as well too. So let's get right into it. All right, so the first thing that I want to go over is when not to hire sales reps. Because a lot of times, this is where people fumble a lot, right? They hire sales reps at the wrong times, meaning that you're hiring sales reps too early or too late sometimes. So I'm going to tell you when not to hire them in the very, very beginning, right? Don't hire sales reps when your revenue is inconsistent. And I'll explain why, right? Because when your revenue is inconsistent, you're going to bring on the sales rep. You're at 50K one month, the next month you're at 20K. Now, I'm not saying if you have 50K one month, you have 40K the next month, right? Then it's like the revenue is inconsistent. No, it just means like, hey, something happened between now and then to where it's just a gap in something. You can easily fix that. What I'm really talking about is those huge gaps, right? When you go from 50K one month, had a great month because maybe you just launched your offer, maybe something happened, right? That gave you a lot of presence, and then the next month you're back to like your average of 20K a month. You don't bring on sales reps for that, because first off, you're going to bring on the sales rep. They're going to come in, they're going to be super excited. Then the next month, they're going to go back down. And then now your retention of that sales rep decreases. So now, first off, you're going to bring on someone, waste your time, ultimately wasting your time, because you're going to train that person, but then you're going to leave because of the fact that they had 5K that first month or 25, whatever, it was set or a closer, but they had a huge amount and now they're making half or less that amount the next month, right? So you don't want to do that when your revenue is inconsistent. Another example of when not to hire a sales rep is when you're making under 50K a month. Now, this is, people like to take this and take it very literal. I'm specifically referencing if you're at a point to where you're under 50K a month and you don't plan on bringing on teams or scaling aggressively, right? With paid ads, and you don't have a, you have a good mark, or you don't have a good market or anything like that, right? When you're making under 50K a month, because this is the way I look at it. If you're not at a point to where you're like, okay, we're about to scale aggressively, we're about to do this X, Y, and Z, right? And this goes for people that don't have marketers, or you're just a one-man team, right? And you're watching this. If you're under 50K a month, first off, look at what's going to do for your profit margins. If you're currently making 20K a month right now, 30K a month right now, whatever, 40K a month right now, you bring on a closer, you want a good closer. You want a good closer that's going to step to your business and do that, right? So ideally, your closer that you're going to bring in as good is going to probably, if your close rate, let's say a closer was 100%, let's just say it was 100%, right? That closer is going to come in and have a closer about 50 to 75%. Because that's typically what the ratio is. It's typically anywhere from like 50% to 75% of what your current close rate is in terms of bringing in a closer, right? So they're not going to typically close as many deals as you unless you're just have a lay down webinar. But I'm referencing a book call from, but I mean, even the same case is with the web, right? It's not going to be the same close rate. So, or if it's just through organic, let's just say your leads are coming through organically, right? And you're hopping on calls like that, right? Or even if it's paid ads traffic and cold traffic and you're hopping on calls like that and you're still under 50K a month, you don't want to do that, because that's going to hurt your profit margins. That's first. Second, it's also going to put you in a position to where you're not even going to be able to fulfill that sales rep, because the case of a closer would make 4K, right, a month, which is okay for certain people. It just depends on where you're finding your reps. But I just highly suggest not doing that. And it takes you time to really know your offer and really grow your offer. The more you know your offer, the better that you can help someone coming into your offer to sell your offer be on that offer when they are selling it, right? Because you're going to be able to understand more about how the sales process works, how certain things need to be in place. Everything needs to be systemized together. So you don't want to hire sales when you're under 50K a month unless you are at a point to where you are scaling aggressively, to where it's like, okay, we're running webinars, we're running ads, we're doing this. Then, of course, you need someone, and maybe you want to give them a base pay or something like that. Let me explain that really quick. I'll make a separate video about it, but let me just explain too how to do that, right? So if you do decide to do this and you are at that point to where you're scaling, but if you're not scaling like that, you're just under 50K a month, don't bring on sales reps. But if you are at a point to where you're about to scale, what you want to do is you want to do two things. Either you can give a person a base, right? Plus, X, Y, Z commission, whatever the case is. It really just depends on the current scenario. Or you can do what I would prefer, which is called a draw, right? So if I'm making $40K a month, but I want my closers to stick around, I know that maybe you're a beginner closer. Maybe I can, maybe I can myself either put you through a sales coaching program, or you set yourself that you've been through a sales coaching program and you're ready because this is your first offer, right? So I'm going to work with you. I already know your skill set. I already know that you need to be trained a little bit more. But what I can do from there is give you a draw. A draw, just not to talk too much about it, but a draw is basically like if I'm making $40K a month for that example, and closers typically get 10%, right? So what that means is if I was already closing $40K a month, I'm expecting that closer to possibly close around 2.5 to 3K, something like that, right, a month. So what I'll do is I'll give them a draw to where it's like basically if they are showing up, doing everything they're supposed to be doing, meeting minimum KPIs, right? They need to be doing the bare minimum things like that. Then I will give them a draw, which means that, hey, you're going to guarantee get 2,500 at the bare minimum. But then, you have opportunity to, of course, supersede that if you were to exceed KPIs, right? But that's because I'm trying to keep that closer. I want to retain that closer, et cetera, whatever the case is. And I want to make sure that you are still fairly compensated as well, too, right? So I would do that, but that's just me diving off in a tangent or whatever. But that's just giving me anyway. So yeah, that's when not revenue inconsistent, under 50K a month. And then on top of that, when not to hire sales reps is when you have no systems. And this is something I see. This is the most common reason when you have no systems. Because if you have no systems, how do you expect for a sales rep to come into your business and meet KPIs? KPIs, for you guys that know that are maybe new to this, are key performance indicators. It's a fancy word for goals, right? What the goals are of them to achieve. But it's what you want to use because you don't want to be talking to somebody and you're sitting here saying goals, and they look at you crazy, say KPIs, okay? So, I never want people to be challenged by their intellect. But anyway, so when you have no systems, because of the fact that when you have no systems, you can't expect the person to come to your business and meet KPIs or do what they need to be doing without a clear guideline, without pre-call SOP. So what do you do before the call? Pre-call, I have whole videos about this, so go watch them. But pre-call SOPs, so what are you doing before the call? What should you be doing as a seller, as a closer before the call? Post-call SOP, what should you be doing after every single call, right? SOP means standard operational procedure. And then as well as off-call SOP, what do you need to be doing when you're not on a call to where you can continue to increase your skill set, get better at what you're doing. Maybe it's reviewing your own call recordings. Maybe it's getting more familiarized with the offer. So looking at the offer owners, like your content or short form, long form videos, like what if it's things like that? Or maybe it's doing some sales training or whatever with the sales manager if you're at that point. But that's what I'm saying, or just sales training with you, right? That's exactly what you need to be having in place as far as the off-call SOP, but systems like that, right? And then of course, so those are more so like not literal systems, like actual technical systems. These are systems. Systems is it's a flexible word. It doesn't always have to be like the systems like the CRM and the Slack and the tech stack and stuff like that. It can be moldable or molded, whatever. So when you have no systems, right? So you don't want to do that because of the simple reason that I just went over. You don't want someone to come into your business and not be able to meet bare minimum standards. And a lot of times I see this is back when I didn't know what a good offer owner was, when I knew what a person that actually I can work with look like. But when I used to just take on anybody, which I'm sure you guys have went through that, or maybe you are currently going through it. But I would talk to a person, they would be like a coach or whatever, and they would say, oh yeah, I brought a sales rep, but they just didn't know what they're doing. Then at the same time, I instantly agree with them, but then I looked at everything on their back, and I'm like, you really had no system to lead to where they could be successful. You didn't even give them an environment they can thrive in. So you want to make sure that you're doing that for your sales reps, because if they have no clear guidelines, they can't even really they can't abide by anything, right? So you want to make sure you're doing that. Let's get into how to not hire sales reps because I went over when, right? I want to go over how. All right, so how not to bring on sales reps before I show you the freaking full solution. How not to do this is, first and foremost, there's two main things. It's not three like the last one. It's really two main things. Bringing on, right? So overhiring. Basically, don't overhire. Because when I say this, I'm saying don't think because okay, I'm doing this, that I should just, get a bunch of sales reps and I should overhire and pay a freaking sales agency. That's really the overhiring with a sales agency, right? So don't go to the sales agency and think, okay, I just need to get a bunch of sales reps because we're at this point. But you have no management in place, you have nothing in place for this person to be led by, right? Or anything. Because we want self-sufficient sales reps. Don't get me wrong. We want self-sufficient sales reps, but we need someone to keep them accountable. So don't overhire when you're at a point to where, okay, we were going from 50K to 100K and you think you need 4 reps to do that. So there's a difference. And there's a way you can break this down because you start looking at every single closer as like cash collected. So there's a way you can say like cash collected per closer. And so you can look at how much your current closers are closing in terms of how much cash collected they are. So that way you can see, okay, if the average rate is 20,000 from each closer, now I know that, which means that, let's say the average cash collected is 50K because why would that closer be making 2K? But yeah, it's 50K, right? Then you want to say, okay, in order to get another 50K, that's when you start looking at your marketing. You have to really reverse engineer this. But you have to say, basically, if I want another 50K, then I need to bring on one more closer, right? But if I'm trying to get to 100K and I know that it takes me, let's say it takes me 5K in ad spend to add another, well, let's make it more realistic. Let's say it takes another 20K in ad spend to add another 100K, right? Then I know that I'm going to go ahead and delegate that ad spend to 20K. And then now I can reverse engineer it by saying, okay, if I'm going to, let me just math this out to you because maybe you guys aren't even understanding. But what I'm saying here is basically if I knew that my average dollar collected, so cash collected, I'm just going to say if my cash collected, per closer, so average cash collected per closer, whatever. So was, let's say it was 50K, right? Then I'm going to go, okay, now I know that off of that alone, I was currently spending, let's say, 20K in order to get 50K collected. Let's just say that's what it was. So if I had one closer, right, and this was like one closer, and I was spending 20K, again, this is where your marketing, your sales come into play, and I was spending 20K, so ad spend was 20K to get that, and let's just say on the average that one closer was doing the 50K, then I would know that, hey, if I want to add on if I wanted to get to 100K, which means I just need to hire one more closer. So because that's just basically, if I want to get to 100K, 50 times 2 is 100. And then that way I know I have to just bring on one more closer. So that's what I'm saying, right? You want to make sure that you're reverse engineering, which means that I'm willing to spend an additional 20K on ads because I want to make sure we're pulling in that. Let's just say that is a ROAS about 2.5, but let's just say we were doing that, right? If that was the case, then okay, that's when we would go ahead and say, this is the wrong, I can't remember it right now, but then we would go ahead and say, okay, now we need to move forward and bring on one more closer. So overhiring is a common mistake I see because they're looking at, oh, okay, I'm going to scale. I need to just do this. No, you just need a dialed-in system in order to bring on another rep that's making, because your average cash collected per closer right now, if you had one closer, typically you would have one or more to look at this average cash collected. But anyway, let's just look at that one closer, right? And on their deal size, they're closing 50K, their average cash collected per closer, not per call, per closer. So it's 50K. Now I can go ahead and reverse engineer that and then say, okay, this is what I need. I just need one more closer in order to get to that next level because we're currently spending 20K in ads. So now I need to spend 20K. This has to be if you're willing to spend more. So you want to be predictable with this stuff, which is why when you are at a point of scale, you want to start looking at things from a paid ads perspective and not going off of organic, and then you can kind of go from there. But if you are doing organic, now you can kind of say, okay, I want to look at, our DMs, our response rate, and start looking at different trackers to track all these things. Good stuff, but yeah, that's pretty much that. That's how to not do that. And then again, like how to not overhire, looking at the numbers. Now, I just went a little bit too far, but it's okay. So, and then the other reason for how not to hire sales reps, having a really bad interview process. So I spelled that wrong, but it's okay. I don't even know where I messed up, but a bad interview process. So when you have a process to where you're bringing on reps and it's like you don't have this can be either a two-part interview or a three-part interview. It really depends. For setters, I typically like to do a two-part interview. For closers, I'll do a three-part interview. That's just the way I do it. Everybody has their different ways. But regardless, don't do a one-part interview. That's the main point that I'm trying to get across here. Because when you have a bad interview process, and let's just say you do one interview, you spent 30 minutes, an hour getting to know the person. Typically, this is 30 minutes, right? You're going to have your first interview about 30 minutes. Your second be about, with the role plays and things like that, depending on if you're going to be a phone setter, DM setter, or closer, whatever the case is. But that's that process. You want to make sure that you're going through, you're getting thorough to where you can know, okay, now this is the process. I do this, and this on this call. And if you want my hiring SOP that I use on these interviews, just go ahead and DM me on Instagram, J Bridges Scales, and just send me the word hiring SOP, and I will go ahead and send you that over, right? But that's what I'm saying. So when you have a bad interview process, you're not going to be able to know what reps are going to be best for your offer or the offer that you're running. And so you're not going to be able to, first off, you're probably not going to retain that person because typically what happens if you're not filtering enough, sales reps, the amount of sales reps are growing a lot these days. So you're not going to be able to know who actually has the skills and who doesn't. So you might either fire them or they might leave because you haven't established that good enough connection with them, right? And so I always do this with setters and closers. I always kind of qualify them a little more than I let them qualify me. Or whatever the case is, let them qualify the offer owner. When I say I'm doing this because I'm letting them think, I'm selling them on the offer. They have to be sold on the offer too because they have to be bought in, right? So it's not just an opportunity for them, it's an opportunity for you, especially if you're dealing with a good rep, right? So you have to sell the offer to them a little bit too. But anyway, so a bad interview process, right, is how not to hire a sales rep when you're just going to get on one call and just say, hey, okay, send me over your call recordings. Okay, cool, send me over a loan video. Okay, cool, we're good to go. And then that's all you're doing. No, because you want to be more thorough than that, right? So you want to hire the right way. All right, so let me show you guys the blueprint, because I don't know why I just did that, but let me show you guys the blueprint in terms of when to hire them, and then how to hire them. Because I know I just gave you guys what not to do. I'm going to give you guys what to do. That way you guys can take it, implement it, and then you guys should use my hiring SOP. So just DM me on Instagram. All right, when to hire these sales reps is the golden question. When do I hire sales reps? How do I even go about it? Whatever the case is, right? So when to hire the sales reps? This is when you're ready to scale. And when I say you're ready to scale, this is my philosophy. You take this as you please, but this is my philosophy. When you are ready to scale with paid ads, I'm just going to tell you that we're ready to scale with paid ads, but plus you have a solid marketer. So either you know how to run in paid ads, or you have a solid marketer. Because if you have not a good marketer, then this is going to be trash, because you're going to be pouring your money into ads and have a sales team here, and then you're not going to have anything coming in, or might have dealing with unqualified leads, et cetera, right? And so when you are ready to go with paid ads, plus you have a solid marketer, because the fact is, paid ads is predictable. If you have a solid marketer, you know that, hey, I can put $10 in, I can get $50 back. And the closer gets what they get, right? Or in this case, I can put 10,000 in, I get 50,000 back, right? And then from there, the closer can get what they get. So when you are ready to scale with paid ads and you have a solid marketer, it makes sense. It makes sense, right? So the thing is, and I'll tell you this for people that have really organic presence, because you can bring it on, right? But I like to, because this is just more predictable, right? I want to have a little bit more certainty behind it, and a little bit more control over the process too. So with organic, you can do this, and sometimes you might need people like a DM setter or something like that. You can kind of just gauge that and go by month analysis and really break down the numbers and things like that. And sometimes it works for organic, but it's just my recommendation, right? And so when you're ready to scale with paid ads, plus you have a solid marketer, bring on a sales team for that. Once you have too much inbound flow day after day after day, as soon as you post, people are asking you to do this, actually do that, right? And then you also should have a dialed in system behind that though. So at that point, you really just should have like a DM setter. If you're dealing with that type of thing, having a DM setter, and then from there you can gauge in terms of the amount of responses that we get daily after posting. What is the percentage of those people that are actually qualified, and then how many people are making it to a call? So at that point, you should really just have one DM setter if you're in that case, and then from there you can gauge it. Then after you gauge that, now you can see if you need to bring on a close or not based on the amount of cash collected being done. But at the very beginning, a lot of things that I see is I've talked to people with over 100,000 followers. You talk to people that's had 500,000 followers, but their sales system is so bad, but they think that they need to bring on sales reps when you're not even making, which leads to my next point, when you're not even making at least 20K a month. And I really don't even want to say that. I really want to say at least 50K, which is my preference. And I'll tell you why that's my preference and why 20K a month isn't. Because this is what I always do. You can train a virtual assistant to be a DM setter, right? You don't need a DM setter for that. You can train a virtual assistant to be a DM setter if you have the right systems. A lot of people don't have the right systems. They don't have the right strategy. They don't know how to do that. They don't know how to train a DM setter. So you'd rather go out and get one that has experience, whatever, just plug them in because you're lazy. That's just call how it is. You're lazy. And I get it, but you decide to be a business owner, right? So at the end of the day, be a business owner. It's your business. Understand that they are a representation of you. So you want to make sure you bring a good talent. You want to make sure that they are good. Either way, even if you bring an experienced setter, you still have to train them. You still have to, work with them. So why not just do a little bit more work? Maybe it's taking, a few more calls than it will with an experienced setter, but just hire a virtual assistant versus just giving people a percentage of your business. Just hire a virtual assistant for about $400 to $800 a month, something like that. That way the revenue, you paying them a consistent base, you're not getting any commission, and go from there when you're in this early stage, right? I would go about it that way. So back to the point, when you are not making at least 50K a month, because I just don't even agree with 20K, but if you are going to bring in a DM setter, if you feel like you want someone to come in, hire a virtual assistant, right? Because I'll even say myself, when I was at the point to where I first started my business, I was even making 5K a month just because I was fortunate enough. I don't recommend this for everyone, but because I was fortunate enough, I brought on a virtual assistant. But I wasn't paying enough to that. I was very fortunate, right? I paid virtual assistant $250 starting off with him, and he's great. He's still my guy to this day, but he doesn't get paid that anymore. But I'm just saying, that was the case. I was just fortunate in that case. And so more so blessed. But anyway, back to the point. So 20K, don't recommend. I recommend you do your DMs. That way you can probably even, instead of you making 20K, you probably make 30, 40K because you can send voice memos. You have more urgency to take care of your business. You have that, the speed to lead is going to be met a little bit more at a higher percentage because of the fact that you are the person that, you're the offer owner, right? No one's going to care more about, no one should care more about your business than you. So don't do this, wait till you get 50K a month. And then also when you're ready to scale with paid ads plus a solid marketer, I would suggest that if you guys are watching this and you're online coaching, like, okay, but I don't want to pay all these crazy marketing fees, look for a growth operator. If you are offer owner with a huge organic presence, say, hey, I'm looking for a growth operator that's only willing to take just revenue share or whatever, or something like that, or whatever the case is. There's plenty of growth operators. I mean, you have myself, but If you're not ready to scale paid ads, I'm probably not gonna work with you. But if you are, right, look for a solid marketer. And there's plenty of growth ops out there that want growth ops, growth partners, right, that want to work with you. So as an online coach, think smarter, not harder. You don't have to go crazy with these crazy marketing agencies if you don't want to, if you've been burnt out, whatever. Find a partner that's actually willing to grow with you, build with you, and then go from there. Right? But anyway, that's again a little bit too much sauce. 50K a month is where you want to be at first before you bring on sales reps. Those are really my two philosophies. But the other one as well too is on top of this, when you have proper sales systems. So it goes back to a little bit what I said earlier when I was saying, okay, you need to have things like your pre-call, SOP. So what are you doing before every single call to where you could just take this whole blueprint, this is easy to make, literally type into Claude. If you're watching this, you need to be having Claude Pro right now, right? It's $20 a month. Get it. If you can't do that, you can't even afford to bring it on the team. So just do it. But type in what you're doing before a call. Tell them, hey, I need to make a pre-call SOP for my offer, for my sales rep. Just tell it everything, right? But then also be very descriptive with what exactly are you doing before a call. These things like this come down to a few different variables, but just put what you're doing before a call. You also want to have, as I said earlier, post-call SOP. What you're doing after a call. You also want to have your off-call SOP. So these are the figurative systems. And then you want to have your tech stack. What this looks like in most cases is you want to have something for the setter to good foundation, right? Good foundation. This typically looks like whatever your CRM is. GHL or Close are the ones that I recommend, either or, right? It also looks like Slack. This also looks like your automation, so Zapier or NAN. So you want to make sure that you have something to where, again, they can succeed. You want to make sure that they're able to be successful. Because when you have it look like this, I'm telling you too, a lot of sales reps, they go to a lot of offers and it looks very unprofessional, very tiny because they don't even have simple systems, the bare minimum. And so when they help onto your offer, I'm telling you, they're gonna be very happy to step into something to where it's organized and everything is flowing. Because first off, onboarding is super important. You know this for the clients that you actually serve, but it's super important for your team as well. When you're onboarding a team member onto your team, they're looking at all these things. So I don't know if you guys I've heard this, but the better the onboarding experience, the longer that the client will stay. It's a true fact, right? There's been plenty of studies around this. So you want to make sure that you are having that good onboarding experience, not only for your clients, but for your sales reps as well too. So when they step into this in comparison to all the other offers that they've probably maybe interviewed or been on or been with, they're gonna be like, wow, this is good. And then you have real credibility. You're training the person. They're gonna feel like, wow, this is good. And most sales reps, they like to go through training, right? So again, this is all part of the process. They will love you just from these simple things. And then that one, when you do come in, maybe you come into rough periods because it happens. Maybe 1 month you had 80K and the next month you have 60K, right? When the rough periods, because you have all this, you're gonna have clear structure and all that stuff too. It's gonna be a little bit more better. And then they're gonna have a little bit more loyalty with you, if that makes sense, right? These things like this. Another example of a sales system, so more figurative, right, would be having those weekly meetings. So, you have those, but having the weekly meetings. And I always suggest a good cadence. I suggest daily. I used to do like 3 times a week, but I noticed when I started operating on higher level businesses that daily is a lot better than 3 times a week. So I would, whenever, no matter what stage you're at, do daily meetings, Monday through Friday, nothing crazy, not the weekends, but Monday through Friday, right? I suggest that. And then that's pretty much, in terms of when you are ready to scale with paid ads, my suggestion, plus you have a solid marketer, or if you're with organic, you better have a cracked marketer and your organic better be hot. I mean hot, right? When you're at 50K a month, this is what I recommend. Other than that, you're going to go the other way. And then when you have proper sales systems in place. Oh, and then also, I didn't even mention, when you have, proper scripts, of course, too. So scripts, frameworks, whatever this is, whether it's a DM script, whether it's a triage phone script. Triage means that a person that's qualifying the people that are booking a call, whatever the case, you should fill out applications. And then same thing with the closers. If you need a solid closing framework, DM me the word framework on my Instagram because I will go ahead and give you my 8-step framework that has collected over $5 million that I have used for myself personally and across all of my clients. It's a great framework to use on every single sales call. If you go by that one, you'll see how your close rate increases as well too. And then pre-call comes down to, just to give you guys a little bit more context on that, pre-call SOP comes down to what is the person doing before the call when they show up. So this can be things like sending manual reminders. This can be things as sending voice notes. This can be things as calling the individuals. It can be a lot of different things, but that's pretty much what that looks like, right? Okay, now let's hop into how to properly hire these sales reps. All right, how to hire the sales reps. So remember earlier when I was talking about basically how you need to have a 2 to 3 step interview. So let's go ahead and go through that first. So what I'm going to go through right now, I'm going to go through the setter side, and then I'll go through the closer side as well, and what should be done for both of them, right? Depending on where you're at in your business and how to just go about the whole interview process. So you first off, you want to have a good interview process, right? And now I'll touch on that first. So when you're doing this for a setter, first thing that you want to do typically is going to be a group environment. Let me just backtrack as well too. You can go on Indeed for this. You can go on a lot of different job posting sites and have a, ZipRecruiter, things like that, and have a posting to where you're looking for sales reps. You can also make some partnerships with some sales coaches, right? Plenty of sales coaches have reps that they have, because most sales coaches these days, in order for you to have a good sales coaching offer, you better be doing some placement as well too, not just training, right? So plenty of sales coaches already have a placement pipeline to where they can place offers, things like that, right? So you can go to them, make a partnership with them, or invest into that to where you can get always ongoing reps. So you can do that too. Another thing as well is partnering up with, so not only sales coaches, sales agencies, because they also will give you reps. That's why relationships are so important. The reason why I've only spent paid ads once for one of the offers that I've been on as far as a sales manager when I was running offers, because of the fact that I have so many different partnerships and there's so many different relationships, I can just go places and get reps, right? And good quality reps. I don't need to do this, do that, do it, whatever. So that's another way. Or you can post a paid ad and just make it simple, make it a B-roll, make it whatever, and just look for sales reps. But then you have to have a strict qualification process through any of those, but you want to make sure. Then as well, you want to have a application that they're filling out. So we're going to talk about setters first. For setters, you're going to go ahead and make sure that, hey, when they do, whatever they find out about you through and they're applying, they're going to make sure they do 2 things. They send over a Loom video, and they also fill out an application that you have for the questions on it. Now, I'm not going to go over the whole entire application in this video, but if it's really important for you, you can always DM me. But again, you want to have an application for them to fill out, depending on what their experience is, what their KPIs have been in the past, whatever the case is. And then, so this can be done in a type form or Google form. And then, you go through the hiring process and go from there. So after you have those 2 things, then you can start filtering out who's good, who's not. Make sure in the application you have a deadline for them to have that done, because if they haven't completed that, then by a deadline, it already shows that they don't even know how to be punctual, right? Then, well, after that is done, now you have cut down the list. Just say you had 30 applicants, and you cut down the list to maybe about 10 people, right? So you had your first set of group interviews. And then you want to then make sure you say the time for the call, right, is, let's say it's 12 o'clock. So you need to be in there 5 to 10 minutes early. Whoever was in the waiting room 5 minutes before the time to actually start, write those people down, because those people are going to be very punctual, right? Most times those people are different. Sometimes you do have the best of the best in the cream of the crop, though, for people that show up exactly on time, but you still want to notate who showed up early, because it just shows you something, right? So that's that. Number 1, first interview that you have in the group interview, it's going to be where you have about, let's say, 10 candidates for an example, right? So you have 10 people that you're interviewing, and that you really just want to ask questions like, okay, your experience. So experience, I just spelled that wrong. My apologies. Your experience, what stood out to you about the offer? So stood out about offer, right? So your experience stood out to you about the offer. Things like, what are your 3 to 6 month goals? So this can be like short-term, long-term goals, because this right here lets you know, hey, if this person's trying to be a setter and a closer and have their own stuff like that, then you probably want to, selfishly as a business owner, you probably want to, maybe if you want to deal with a person that, me, I tell all the closers, I'm like, hey, as long as you tell me right here you're willing to stay on the offer and grind for at least 6 months, because that's the average churn rate for a closer. As long as you're doing that for 6 months, that's making me happy, right? Because I understand as you go through this, you might want to do other things. You're making a lot of money, you might want to do other things. That's fine. But give me that certainty you can say it for 6 months. As a closer, setters, I expect them to stay a little bit longer, but same thing there. It can be setters churn within 3 to 6 months. So I'm not expecting that, but I want to know what their goals are, because then I know, okay, who is actually trying to be a ride or die, or who's trying to lie, right? So that's pretty much that. So your experience that is about off 3 to 6 month goals. And there's a few other questions I asked again, but you can just go to the hiring for that. But that's pretty much what I'm doing on that first interview. And then I might ask a hypothetical question. What would you do in the case of, if I'm hiring for DM setter, what would you do? And so a hypothetical question, right? What would you do if a person DM'd you? I need to think about it. I DM'd you. How long have you been doing? What would you say back? And I give them the offer. I never tell these individuals who the offer owner is. I give them information about the offer, right? And maybe I might tell them this person has X quantity amount of followers, whatever, right? And so that's pretty much that. The second interview, now I'm not necessarily, maybe I have 4 people now. And also I'm doing this because I want to filter out who's actually serious and who's not. Because typically people that, let's say I brought on 6 people, like I kept 6 people, you might see 4 people on that second call, right? So that's the same thing. 4 people. Now I'm going to go ahead and ask them more questions about themselves, maybe even more about their experience. But in this case, this is really for role plays. I just want to see role plays, and I want to see how they react to certain things, right? So I might even, what I do is I end up sharing my screen with the candidates, and I give them access to a certain Google Doc, and I have a full conversation with them, because I want to see who can actually be a good DM setter and who can't. So people don't do that, but that's what I do when I'm having the role plays with DM setters. It's not, again, people don't do that, but that's what I do. So that's how I'm able to see in real time, and the same thing with the phone setting. All right, let's get into closing. Closing is going to be typically the same thing as far as this first interview, so I'm not going to go over that. Second thing I want to do is I'm not going to do a role play. I'm going to go over, again, I'm looking for a closer that is willing to stay for a long time, right? Not a short time, not a good time, but a long time. So, and a good time. But I want to see, so that's why I have 3 different interviews. First thing is pretty much the standard thing right there. And I'm just picking out who's my favorites, who's not my favorites. So then after that, second interview is typically when I'll do like hypotheticals. So same thing that I would do in here. It's hypotheticals, go over, okay, give them different cases. I might do light role play with them and then go from there. Third interview, I'm going to knock it down to the 2 best people, or 3, depending on the volume of how much you get. But typically it's just the 2 best people. So I'll just say 2 to 3 best people. And then from there, I'm stating, okay, from this, I'm going to give them different scenarios. And these are all separate interviews, by the way. These are one-on-one. I don't do these final interviews together. And then I'm going to ask them, I'm going to go through the entire script. I'm also going to ask them, again, what would they bring to the offer that makes them different, and why should I choose them over anybody else? And then that's pretty much what I go through here. I go through the whole entire closure script with them, going through them, listening. And what I'm listening to here is tonality. I'm listening to what they say to certain things that I say. I'm also going to ask some of the most common objections for that specific offer. But in most cases, you're always going to hear a partner objection or spouse, right? The I need to think about it objection. You're also going to hear another common objection is I need more info, which is kind of the same thing, but it's just a different way of saying it. And then you have the ones to where it's like the person actually has lack of confidence in themselves. So how would you respond to a person? But anyway, these are just different examples, right? So I would just ask them about these different ones based on what the offer currently is dealing with in terms of their most objections that they're getting. And then from there, I'm going to ask them how they deal with that, but I'm also going to walk them through the entire script and see how they're responding. I'm looking at their body language. I'm looking at what they're doing. I'm looking at, are they sticking to the script? And then what impresses me the most is when people say like, hey, when I ask them a question, I say, do you usually use a script or you use a framework? And I might typically ask them the first one. And so If no one knows what a framework is, I'm you're probably dealing with a bunch of beginners. But the ones that say a framework and they know actually what that is, that's standing out to me, right? Those are just different things I look for. But again, if you want the hiring XP, just DM me on Instagram, the hiring XP, and I'll send it over to you. But this is pretty much everything in terms of when and how to hire sales reps for your offer, for an offer you're running, whatever the case is. Now, if it stood out to you and you're like, dang, she knows her stuff. I want more help. I want her to run my offer. I want whatever. Just go ahead and start down below, book a call with me or my team. And I'll go ahead and give you the best strategy for what it looks like for your business, see if I can help you, see if it's a good fit, mutual fit as well too. Make sure you're like, okay, I saw the YouTube video, but let me just make sure, right? We can do that on call. If you want me to consult your offer as well, I do that as well too. And then on top of that, if you guys want me to audit your business, you start down below and I will audit your business and tell you what you need to do to move forward and grow. And I'll see you soon. See you guys in the next video.